get my 6. Guys, you see right there, look in the middle of the trail. That's a big 8-point buck. He's just standing up there staring at me. I don't know how well you can see him. Got a big 8-point buck here. Bunch of angry squirrels over there. What's up, big buck? You'll see him move away. I was just sitting up here in the backyard because I've got to keep my connection to my laptop because I've got something to show you. Something somebody sent in with a story. Look, that's a footprint. Proof that these things exist. Okay, I'm gonna read you a couple of stories. Okay, big buck, angry squirrels, low flying, small engine aircraft. I guess that buck wants to hear the story. So I want to thank a couple of people for submitting some stories to the channel here. The greatest homesteading channel on the internet that has absolutely nothing to do with homesteading off the grid. Bradley Warden, we're going to read your story tonight, and Drew Willis, 2 gentlemen who submitted stories. Your stories, they're being read tonight, and they're also going to be published in True Hauntings Volume 4. He left. He went up one of the other trails. You can't tell, but I've cut some new trails back through there because the meadow is becoming a forest so quickly. I want to be able to get through all of it for when we're looking for him, her, it, or they. So keep watching back there. Saw a big buck cross the trail. You never know who or what else you might see cross that trail. So we hope to have True Hauntings Volume 4 wrapped up by the end of this weekend and published on Amazon and print and Kindle. If you have a story, an experience with anything paranormal, supernatural, cryptozoological, UFOs, aliens, submit it to the channel. Give us your permission to use it. We'll get it in there. The email address is crazylake@mail.com. Now, the picture goes with Drew Willis's story, so I'm going to save that for last. I want to read a story that we ended up titling Dreams, Erie and I, as we edited. This is again by Bradley Warden. He says, "Hello, Kevin. I enjoy your show. It seems we're from the same neighborhood, not physically, but mentally. You can use my name if you'd like. What I have to share is beyond my understanding. Maybe you can figure it out. When I was 7 or 8, I had recurring nightmares, 2 of them actually. One was of a gigantic rock the size of a car that was balancing on a toothpick of a wooden shaft. I was, of course, under it, the rock teetering and barely balancing. I was being terrorized, scared it would crush me. I do recall waking in a sweat. It never fell, but threatened me. The second horrible dream was of a large, I think, spider's web. It wasn't following the regular pattern of a spider's web, but had lots of spirals and hard 90-degree turns. It was always deadly, and I never saw what had built it or spun it. I was frightened of it. Don't know why. These 2 monstrosities were waiting for me as I drifted away most nights, these 2 terrible dreams. Unexplained and unexpected, they suddenly stopped. I was happy and they soon drifted away in my young memory. Fast forward 65 years. I was a retired power lineman now and daydreaming in my favorite easy chair. In my dream state, I was in my childhood home. It was in the night, and I took a step forward and looked down on my young self. I was struggling with some obvious problems, and I immediately knew what it was. I bent down and whispered to myself that all would be okay and the nightmares and the fear would be gone. I watched as my young self stopped struggling and eased into a sound, peaceful rest. I stirred back into a fully conscious awareness, wondering what had just taken place. I can only assume that time, in this case 65 years, had no bearing. If you know what this was, please share it. Thank you, Kevin." You know what? It's so interesting. I am going to share what I think. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. I know many of you that watch the channel are as well. I haven't read all of his books, but I've read most of them. Just knocked off an Agatha Christie book 5 minutes ago, Death on the Nile or Murder on the Nile. Well, I've just recently started reading her this year. I've read half a dozen of her. I wish I'd have gotten into her sooner. Does anybody like her? Show of hands. What a great writer she was. My point is, Fairy Tale, Stephen King's latest novel, is on the pile, and it's the next one I'm going to crack open. So when I read about this dream, Bradley Warden. Bradley Warden, when I read about your dream, it reminded me of 2 Stephen King books. Now, these scenes were not, I don't think, in the movies, which are always so different than the books, but the 2 books were Dolores Claiborne. You'll remember, that's where the woman killed her husband, lured him to fall down the well shaft, and they could never pin it on her because they never had proof. They never found the body, and she did that because he was molesting their daughter. And then the second book I'm going to reference here was Gerald's Game, I believe it was, where a man and his wife went out to their vacation cabin out in the middle of the woods, and he tied her up on the bedpost, willingly. This is just some kinky stuff they would do. Tied her up by the wrists and the ankles of the 4 posts of the bed. They started going at it, and then he had a heart attack and died. And so here she is in the middle of the woods, all tied up. Nobody's even, aware of where she is. And just the horror of days it took her to figure out how to get out of that situation. Well, Stephen King, an amazing writer, did one little snippet scene in both of these 2 different books that were written several years apart. So in Dolores Claiborne, there's a scene where I think it's the main character peeks under the bed, and she sees, let me see if I get this right. There's a woman, she gets the image of a woman tied up to the 4 posts of the bedposts. And she tells her it's going to be okay. Something like that. But then in Gerald's Game, there's a scene where the woman has a vision or something where she's peeking underneath her bed, and she sees a little girl that's hiding under the bed from her father who's out to get her again. And she tells her things are going to be okay. And that's the only reference to each book in each book that is made. And I think what he's trying to do there is show paralleling multiverses, which has become a big thing recently with the Spider-Man, the Marvel comic stuff. So, Bradley Warden, when I read your story, that's what I thought of. It made me wonder, did the child you finally become rest assured and at ease, and the nightmares drifted away because the 65 years later you, the 70-something-year-old you, gave that assurance through the multiverse? It's a stretch, but that's the comparison I made. Okay, now, I'll let my whistle. Going on to the next one. By Drew Willis. And again, if you guys have stories, look, this is just a 1-page story. It actually carried over to the 2nd page, and I just wrote so I didn't have to print off. I'm very thrifty. I'm tight, okay? So I saved a piece of paper by just writing the last 3 lines on this one and not printing off the next one. Just how I've always been. I know what it's like to struggle financially, so when times are good, which they're really good now, I still don't take that for granted and splurge. And so anyway, my point is this is about a 300-word long story, so it can be this short. You don't have to write a 3,000-word essay. I actually prefer if you keep it under 1,000. We've got room for a few more stories. Send it to crazylake@mail.com if you have one. So, Drew Willis writes, "You may use my name, but I will not disclose exactly where I live other than the state itself. My name is Drew J. Willis, and I'm 20 years old. And I live in a small rural town in Indiana." Drew, welcome to the channel. It's like 76% of my viewers are my age or older. I love knowing we've got some Gen Zers on here, and I'm sure there's some millennials out there too. Drew continues, "I've had a number of weird, unexplainable things happen in my life. I've been watching your channel for the past 7 years off and on. First off, it was summer of 2021. Me and my family had gone on a little trip in Tennessee. We were there for a week. When we came back, it was probably about 5, maybe 6 in the afternoon. My mom had gone outside for something, and I went with her. All of a sudden, I hear this unexpected, loud crashing noise in our woods. The only thing I could think to do was to grab my phone and make my way up towards the tree line where our yard meets the woods, similar to how you talk about the type of area where the veil thins. When I was up near that area, I saw 3 very abnormally shaped footprints. Keep in mind that no one has been in this area for over a week. I reached down and I grabbed a large branch, walked up to a tree and gave a couple of knocks. It took just a minute, but I got a response. I tried it again and got nothing. We've had that happen here a lot. We'll get like one response, but then after that, they're like, nope, no more. So now he goes into another story that deals with the glitch in the matrix. But this is the picture that he took when he went up there. Look at that. There is I don't have photograph printer paper on my printer. I would have printed it off. Oh, I thought, what's the basketball hoop doing up here? That's in the front yard. That's the reflection of the camera on the tripod. But you see that footprint, right? I think you can see it right there. That's the image you got. Look at that. Huge. Okay. The second story. A bit of background information before the next story. My dad has driven a late model tan-colored Chevy Impala before, and he now drives a dark blue Trailblazer. If you're wondering what this is, that's my well pump and a water hose that we use to water the garden down here below me. Keep looking for him, her, it, or they, what may or may not cross the trail back there. The next story is something that happened a little more recently. My dad lives in a different town that is about 30 to 40 minutes from where we live. This past Friday, we drove into town to pick him up because we were going to an event. We had just come into town when I looked over at a Dollar Tree and I saw a tan-collared Chevy Impala right behind a blue Trailblazer. So he's seen both vehicles that his father either has or has had. Weirder still, when we got to the house, there sat my dad in his Trailblazer. Either you call that a coincidence or a glitch in the matrix. I know what I saw, and it seriously weirded me out. If you can do anything with pictures, maybe you can put my mind at ease some. Keep up the great work, Kevin Lake. He was referencing the picture, of course, that I showed you. Hope Daniel loves homeschool. He does. Best wishes, Drew Willis. So thank you, Drew, and thank you, Bradley, for your stories. Just wanted to share those with you quickly. If you've got a story, submit it to the channel. The email address is crazylake@mail.com. Give us your permission to use them like these gentlemen did. We'll share them on the channel, put them in the upcoming volumes of True Hauntings and or both. So with that said, see you for more here at the most popular homesteading channel on the internet that has nothing to do with homesteading off the grid, next time.